Three or four things. You're not getting them in your diet. Nobody's perfect. What
Right.
should you do?
I don't think anyone's getting enough probiotics in their diet. I think fiber, collagen, and creatine are kind of like the ones and I think they're easy because two of those can be mixed into a shake, and then the two other ones can just be a capsule.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vonda Wright, and this is Hot for Your Health. Join us for conversations on the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture as we bring you tech innovators, thought leaders, and the movers and shakers who are transforming science fiction into your new health reality.
Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Vonda Wright. Welcome back to Hot for Your Health, where what a fun job that I have getting to talk to really curious and interesting people. And Logan Chierotti is no exception. He is a seasoned entrepreneur with a wealth of experience. And I bet that you know his bright and shining first company, Physician's Choice, that he founded in 2017 and quickly grew in 5 or 6 years to over a $200 million venture, whose products are all over the stores that we shop in, like Target and Sam's and CVS and Amazon, which, if you know, Logan, my husband's like, oh, surprise, another package from Amazon, probably your stuff. But that's not it, honestly. You did that, but you've had three major exits from a business standpoint. For a not an 85-year-old man, which you obviously aren't, is amazing. So welcome to Hot for Your Health. I'm so happy to have you.
Sure, thank you. That was a great intro. And I actually am 85. I'm just so healthy. I look so young. I'm just
This
kidding.
is what living in Aspen at altitude does to you.
That's the secret.
So fun.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about a lot of things, and I do want to talk about your take on the supplement industry and this probiotic that's a number one bestseller. But you know, having accomplished so much before you even look 85 years old, what are you passionate about right now? What drives you now? You've had so much success, so you're like, oh, I'm just all good. What drives you
Uh,
now to still
I
show
don't
up
know.
like this?
Yeah, I wish I was that calm and could just sit around and do nothing. But I still am very passionate about the supplement, the health and wellness industry. The longer I've had this company, actually, honestly, the more I've gotten into health and wellness and taking care of myself and really trying to find what makes me feel the best every day. So I've gone through a lot of, as you can imagine in this journey, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs and like different body weights and health and different experiences building companies that can add a lot of stress to your life.
Mhm.
So now I'm just truly trying to figure out like what makes me feel the best, and then how can I share that with other people through either our products or doing things like this, getting the knowledge out that I've got. And I don't claim to know everything by any means. I'm still learning every day, but it's been a good journey. But I'm really passionate about health and wellness, honestly.
Well, I love that you touched on the fact that no matter, and I'm just going to add this, no matter what industry you're in, one of the main things people cite as a reason for dishealth or unhealth is stress and lack of sleep. I mean, I think we've heard a lot about the how to move and how to lift, but I don't think that anyone has really cornered the market on how to control our stress levels in a and you must have figured out something, because you're being an entrepreneur and starting big companies is about as 24/7 as it gets, right? So what have you learned for handling all that cortisol?
And I have two kids to add on top of that,
Oh
young
yeah,
kids.
2 kids.
Yeah, two young kids. I've experimented with a lot, and a couple of years ago, I actually hired a meditation coach that specializes in mindfulness.
Mhm.
And that helped me a lot. I started, and I'm someone that cannot sit still for like 2 minutes. So like the thought of me meditating was very foreign. I didn't think I could ever do that. But I started with meditating for like 1 to 5 minutes in the morning, and then I slowly built up to 30 minutes. And I would say it changed my life dramatically. Like it helped me even though I had a lot of different body pain, a lot of aches and pains and like stress, and I think I was holding a lot of stress as pain in my body. And so through meditation, I was able to release a lot of that. I think it helped me think clearer, it helped me function better. And it kind of gets you into a place of just not worrying so much about the future, especially through like the mindfulness practice. Um, you kind of let go a lot of like what could happen. Because I think, at least for myself, like I tell myself all these stories all day of like this could happen if I do this or this could, like, and you kind of like feed into these things. And through mindfulness, they teach a lot about like not holding on to those things and not worrying so much about what could or couldn't happen and trying to really live in the present. And
Mhm.
I haven't mastered that by any means, but I'm working on it, and that has helped me a lot.
Well, I'm coming to you with the true confession that every time I try to meditate, I either continually make lists as my brain starts to dump or I go to sleep, right? So that is a non functional meditation habit. But as you have gotten more, um, your practice, is that the right way to say it? Your meditation
Yeah.
practice has gotten more successful, and and the mindfulness of staying in the moment. When I've been in the room, and I feel privileged that I have been in the room many times with Deepak Chopra, the way he brings us to mindfulness is we notice things. Like you can't be thinking about the world when you notice your head and your eyes and your, what does that mean in your practice? How do you listen? You're like 12 times busier than me and I'm busy. How do you stay in the moment?
I think, well, for my practice, what I realize is even how you discuss like having lists and building, like that happens to me too when I'm practicing, right? I start thinking about like, oh, I got to pick my son up and I got a finance meeting today, and I got to deal with this problem at work. But it's just kind of watching where the mind is going and realizing, like, look at all these things I'm thinking, like, look at all these thoughts I'm having. And then it kind of brings you back down to like, oh, okay, these are just thoughts. So it's
Yeah.
even like I've started out focused doing the body practice where I focus on like my toes and my
Yeah.
knees and,
Yeah.
and that whole thing. And I still do that. But now I can when I do it, it's more visualizing the thoughts I'm having and realizing like, wow, look how like sat here for 5 minutes and look at like where my mind has gone, like what crazy adventure I've had. And then that kind of brings you back to like, okay, let's come back to the moment for a second. When you realize and you really like kind of watch your thoughts, it brings you back to the moment, I would say.
So that's interesting. What you're saying is instead of in our house, we call it spinning out, we're letting our thoughts spin out down somewhere. You're actually turning your attention, acknowledging them, and settling them. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, exactly. It's once you recognize that that's happening, you kind of like it brings you back to like, okay, I'm going to come back to the moment. Because I think from like even the guy that was coaching me that I still work with today, kind of brought that to my attention. Like everyone, he's been practicing for 20 years. He was like, I still sit there and like start thinking about like this fight I had with my wife and this and that and these things that happened. But he's like, it's just understanding that those are thoughts kind of bring you back to the present moment. So that has helped me a lot.
I feel very encouraged that your guru still exists in his head because just another thing to have to be successful about, right? In my mind, I'm like, oh, I just failed the meditation thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's
So
interesting. Well, so you spend how many minutes a day gathering your thoughts, get centering or being in the moment?
I usually start every morning. I do a 30-minute seated meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of like starts my day out fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for a long time, I had a lot of body pain. Like just like I thought I had a back problem. I thought I had a neck problem. Like, it's like all these things. And that has helped me relieve a lot of that. And I realized like over time that it was just really stress. Like I was just holding all this stress in my body. So for me, that was a big motivator to do it because I wanted to like figure out how to try to like fix myself. And I had gone to all of these doctors. I mean, we
Yeah.
can later,
Some
but
would
like
say there's an anti-inflammatory supplement for that, Mister.
some would say for sure. Yeah.
Some would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even that's
Maybe there
probably
is,
part of,
but
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's probably part of like the whole journey I've had is just been trying to fix various issues I have. And I like going to doctors and realizing like I wasn't getting necessarily not, I don't want to say not help, but it wasn't, and nothing was really working. It was like, here's a pill or here's like a PT session. And then it just would never kind of get better. So I've experimented with so many things and spent
yeah,
a lot of money trying to
and time.
a lot of problems, a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that the first thing on your list for feeling better and settling your brain didn't jump right to medications or I mean, you went through the process, so we don't have to. I think it's really interesting to harness our body brain connection. I mean, more and more we know that, every organ system. I'm an orthopedic sports surgeon, and lately I've been talking about even there's a connection between the bones and the brain. So why shouldn't there be a connection to the other things you're talking about? But I'm really interested, and I think everybody will be interested since everybody knows physician's choice and it's all over the place. How did that happen? Can we talk about your origin
Yeah,
story? How did that happen?
for sure. So I guess we'll back up pretty far back, probably 20 years ago. I was 18 at the time. I was in Mexico on a spring break trip. A guy's spring break trip, kind of like the MTV, like, oh, this is going to be so fun, like one of these wild things. And it was
Because you were 18, it was going to be amazing.
right,
Right.
right. I don't know why my parents let me do that, but that's another story.
You know what?
For sure. So I got hit in the head with like a blunt object. I don't remember what it was. Someone told me that it was some sort of bottle was thrown at me. And
That is
yeah,
consistent with an 18-year-old's trip.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it knocked me unconscious, and I fell and hit my head on some really hard concrete. And I woke up like the street of Mexico, like not knowing where I was, what was happening. I was bleeding everywhere. I was very disoriented. I couldn't
Yeah.
hear,
Concussed, probably.
concussed. Yeah, I couldn't hear. I had this horrible ringing in my ears, just like very disoriented. So I went to the hospital there. I came home and I was still very disoriented. Like I could barely get out of bed. I couldn't
Mhm.
hear at all out of like one of my ears, and the other ear was like impacted, but I was basically deaf in one ear.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so what had happened is I had broken something inside my ear called your paralimb fistula, and that helps with like balance and coordination. It also affects your hearing. And so I started going to all these doctors, and they were like, yeah, maybe we could do surgery. Like it's kind of like a brain surgery, but they were like, it might not fix it. You're probably going to just be deaf the rest of your life in that ear and have
Mm.
impaired hearing in your other ear. And, at 18, they were like, don't go to concerts, like, don't listen to loud music. So at 18, this was very like, I was like, my life is over. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to me. And so I had been going to doctor, like to a bunch of different doctors and was getting the same answer. And my mom was like, let's go to this naturopath supplement doctor. And I was like, that's mumbo jumbo. Like, I don't, I was angry and I was like, this is BS. Like, I'm not going to naturopath. Like, it's not going to work. But she persisted and we went to this naturopath. And he was actually a doctor too that had like transitioned to the naturopath, like
Mm-hmm.
that world.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a really high dose arnica, and within 2 days, like, the dizziness, all of that faded. My hearing came back, and this was all tested. I had been going to doctors and getting hearing tests. Came back, my hearing came back to like 95%. And so after that, I was like, wow, there is like a world where, maybe like the surgery is not the answer, and there's a natural way to fix things. So I became obsessed with supplements at that point in my
And
life.
so, for those who've never heard of Arnica, what does it do? What did it do for you?
I honestly don't know what it did to me in that specific circumstance. I think it's like a high dose anti-inflammatory is what I can understand from like, I'm not an arnica specialist. We specialize more in probiotics.
Yes, you do.
But that started my like really deep interest into like supplements and health and wellness. I started working at GNC
Hmm.
selling supplements. I was experimenting with like so many supplements, just trying to like be as healthy as I could. And this was like probably 20 years old. And then I had started a couple other companies. I had sold those and had some like smaller successes. And in 2015, I was rambling on about, I really want to start a supplement company. Like all you can really get is like private label stuff on the internet that is very good at the time. I mean, you could find stuff, but you had to really dig around to like find high quality, really good supplements. And my wife, Jen, point was like, you either need to shut up or start this company because you're talking a lot about it and you're just like not doing anything.
Wow, Jen.
Yeah. So Jen get it for Physician's Choice because she pushed me to do that.
Yeah.
And so then we started really researching, and I was like, there's a big gap in the market in like high quality supplements that you can get on the internet that that are effective, that have been third party tested, that are made in America, that you know what you're getting. At the time, a lot of what I was finding on Amazon was just kind of like I said, like private label stuff, meaning it was just the same
Relabeled other people's stuff,
label.
right? Yeah. Like peanut butter, different labels on the same stuff. Yeah.
So we hired a doctor, we hired some formulators, and we started really digging like how do we create some really good efficacious products.
Hmm.
My thing was like I wanted to create products that I would take myself as like a diehard supplement user that I would be excited about and that I would like recommend to friends and family. And
Hmm.
so that started our journey and it started on Amazon. And because we made really good products that people like, it quickly took off. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then 7 years later, we've sold, 25 or 30 million units. Like it's a very, now we have the number one selling probiotic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how that journey started.
But we want your advice because I don't have to tell you, but those that have been under a rock listening to this, the billion or more dollar supplement industry is, as you've said, is completely unregulated. So if you're giving your best advice to people trying to evaluate what the heck is going on right now, what does high quality mean? What does third party testing mean? Why is it important that things are at least assembled or purified in the United States? Take us down that road.
For sure, yeah. So, I mean, I think we're all very fortunate at this point to have the internet and like the online shopping experience we do because there is so much information now and like, reviews are, at least on Amazon, I think are now a good source of like vetting products because there's so many like you can't manipulate Amazon reviews to accept like it's really like it gives you a good gauge, but
Mhm.
really like products that have been third party tested. So, people can claim that, but if you look for, actual documents, which, some companies have, some don't, we provide those to consumers when they're asked for them. So we have all our third party testing.
Mhm.
And then it's,
That per batch, or is that you design a product and it's done once, or is that per
every batch is tested.
every batch, right?
Yep. So we have our test with the manufacturer, we third party test all our products.
Mhm.
Um, And then we custom formulate our products. Again, like, there's a lot of big supplement brands where they're just off the shelf,
Mhm.
which are not bad, but they're kind of like the letter vitamins, like vitamin C is usually vitamin C, but we work with doctors. We use clinically studied ingredients. We use like
Mhm.
the highest quality products. It's just everything, like I said, I'm obsessed with supplements. I do when we formulate products, I'm still to this day, we have a large team of formulators and people in our company, but I still get involved in that because as a user, I want to make sure again it's something I would take or I would recommend to like friends and family.
So when you start with, let's say you're making something new, do you start with, okay, here's a pain point, a problem to solve? Do you start with a story? Like, I talked to Vonda Wright today. She's a 58-year-old woman. This is what she's got. How do you start? Because I think when you formulate, and I'm not a formulator, but when you read ingredients, I'm sure that some products have just dumped a bunch of ABCs in there and other products are like, okay, this is how we want this woman to feel, or am I off base, or how do you do it?
Yeah, you're on point with that. Usually we'll look for like a gap in the market. So I'll give you an example, a riff example. So we're coming out with a fiber product right now that's a really good fiber product. But what we saw in the market was like kind of all the, I don't want to say all, like the big players in the fiber industry right now are kind of these legacy brands that have a bunch of artificial ingredients or just like a bunch of junk in them that you don't need for taste or other things that like really aren't needed in a fiber product. And no one's really called them out on that because they were selling on the shelves and like
Mhm.
the average consumer just walks in and buys what's off the shelf. But now with the internet, there's more information. So we were like, we want to create a good fiber product that has clean ingredients, that's high
Mhm.
quality, that doesn't have preservatives or artificial ingredients, that tastes really good. we saw that as a big gap in the market. And so
Mhm.
that's how we kind of look for the gap. And then like, how do we formulate something that we can stand behind and feel good about taking?
So gap and then highest quality you can find.
Highest quality. And
I
then a
mean,
lot of
you
the
go,
ingredients,
go ahead.
to say a lot of the ingredients we use will be like, we'll work with top suppliers and say like, okay, this ingredient has clinical studies behind it. This is and there's two things you kind of have to look. Does it have clinical studies behind it? The ingredient, like that's good. But some companies will then put like a what we call pixie dust of that ingredient in there. So
Oh, like three
yeah, like
drops.
just a little bit because they're expensive, like these ingredients,
Mhm.
because they've been tested, they've been proven. But we want to say, okay, we're going to put in like the proven amount of this. So if it's, 500 milligrams, it was what clinical trials were done on, and that's what people had results with. We're going to put the full 500 in there, even though it's going to cost us a little more as opposed to like a proprietary formula that has a little bit of pixie dust in there and then a bunch of other like cheapo ingredients. And that's what a lot of the fiber industry right now is just kind of like a mixture of mishmash stuff. And so that's usually how we'll formulate.
So with your new fiber, this is so specific because I serve midlife women and we're
Yeah.
all about fiber. Um, is it a 5 gram dose that you're
Yeah.
giving, or can we take more? Because a lot of the women I serve get really bloated, and maybe
Right.
that's just the fiber itself. Maybe that's all the other stuff filler that's added, but
It could be the filler and it could be like the source of fiber. Our initial dosing is 5 grams because we think that's a good like starting point.
Mhm.
For different people react differently with fiber, right? So like I always tell people like try a 5 gram dose and then see where it goes for you. I think you can also build up a bit of like resistancy to the bloating from that.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like push our products on people by any means, but then we also have a really good digestive enzyme that helps with bloating that we use again, like the clinical ones that show that it can help with bloating. So,
Yeah.
and I don't like, I'm not a person that says like take something and then take another thing to counteract
You're not
that.
stacking. Yeah. You're not trying to
Right,
stack us today.
right,
Yeah.
right, for sure.
Well, I was just thinking, I wasn't thinking of an enzyme. I was thinking, well, you're feeding the gut biome with this fiber, right? The prebiotic of fiber, postbiotic. Um, so maybe does your probiotic, which I want to talk about next, your number one product, help with that with the fiber? Because late in life, I've started eating a lot of yogurt for all the reasons, to get lactobacillus and all the good things. But can that also help if women are trying listen, women in the demographic I serve need at least 30 grams of fiber a day. That is a lot of friggin' fiber. So does a probiotic on top help with that?
The probiotic can help it. I mean, again, it depends on what people are looking for. I mean, I think everyone should take a probiotic, and that's not because of them. I also went through a lot of like gut health, and
Yeah.
I had ulcerative colitis for a long time.
Oh, so
I was,
inflamed.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I was told I needed this like $400 a month prescription, and I was like, this is like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I went through my own gut health journey at that time, trying like VSL3, which is a good probiotic, but it's very expensive. It's like
Mm-hmm.
50 or $60. So at the point that time I was like, I don't want to spend $60 on a probiotic. So this also led me down to creating our probiotic that I thought was like, okay, I want to create something that's really good, that's like as good as the top probiotics market, that we don't have to spend, consumers and myself don't have to spend $50 on. And I'm not saying probiotics cure ulcerative colitis, but I was able to get rid of that through taking probiotics, eating healthy, taking fiber, like just kind of getting rid of things that were inflaming my gut.
And causing it to leak can be inflamed, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what is the basis of your probiotic? Is it a lactobacillus
It,
majority of
it's
cultures? What is its purpose?
majority of lactobacillus, yeah. But we
Uh-huh.
have it depends on, we have a lot of probiotics. So we have a women probiotic, we have like our 60 billion, and it depends on the one. Like some will put different strains depending on what people are trying to do. So there's the interesting thing and what I like about probiotics is there's a lot of science behind probiotics, and it's also why we chose to focus on that because there is so much science. So different strains can do different things. I think, it depends on what people are trying to do. Like we have a, vaginal probiotic, which is really good, which has strains like from, 100 This sounds kind of weird, actual like vaginal bacteria. So it's,
Oh,
taken,
of course.
yeah, it's a really good effective. So we put specific strains in there from that for that product.
Mhm.
So that's like the fun thing for me about probiotics and doing it is just all the science behind it.
Well, I mean, we're going to stay there for 2.5 seconds because number one, I don't hear people talking about, uh, and I should if people are talking about it, talking about what is the issue you're trying to solve for, and then choosing the right probiotic. The majority of the conversation is just, oh, probiotic. But I love that you guys recognize that the vaginal microbiome is different than the gut, because what women in general, and anybody listening, if you haven't heard this, is that probiotics aimed for gynecourinary health can save lives. Actually, 30% of women die with a UTI, and if we can prevent that and create an environment that prevents that, not only with probiotics, but also, I don't know if your constituency is talking about this vaginal estrogen, I think you can save so many lives. It's not just about whether your gut bloats or something, it's about dying, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to sound like you're dying, but for sure. But I
Oh yeah,
100%
don't tell us you're curing dying. You'll have to
sure.
defend yourself with that one, right?
For sure. But you're
Yeah,
dead on. I mean, there's like, there's different strains do different things, and it depends on what people are trying to do. But that's why we've created a whole lot of probiotics we have a really good kids probiotic, and
hmm.
a kids fiber product that is really good because I think getting and
Mm-hmm.
that was fun because it's flavorless. So what I do is I dump it in my kid's water bottle in the morning and they
They
don't
don't even
even know.
know.
Because it's like trying to get a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old to eat fiber every day is like really difficult. But and they get sick a lot and they take a lot of antibiotics. So we're like really trying to like give them a lot of antibiotics to make sure that their gut's healthy and that they're not, having the downsides of taking antibiotics all the time, which during the school year seems to be
A
every other.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the clinical studies, because I know that's really important to you, and it's important to me too. What I find when I read some supplement literature is that the honest truth is that there are a lot of rat studies. There's a lot of teeny tiny, like we had 50 people and some. So how do you choose, and your scientists, I mean, how do you get around that? There are not 100,000 person studies. And so how do you choose, and I'll use a word that is used a lot in the longevity space, which is hot about supplements. It's called, you know, allopathic doctors like me, we like to cling to the randomized control trials, evidence based. But the reality is that much of medicine is evidence influenced because we just don't have a randomized control trial that answers every question. So, how do you look at the clinical studies that you then base product development on?
It's a good question. And it is like you said, there's so many kind of traps in that. Like it could be like a sick population. So it's hard. What we try to do is work with really good vendors that sell we have a set group of vendors that we know run really good studies that they
Mm-hmm.
usually run double blind, placebo, like gold standard clinical studies. And that's who we'll try to buy ingredients from.
Mm-hmm.
Not every ingredient has that kind of research behind it, unfortunately, but when we can
That's
find
true.
it, that's what we're always trying to get just the top of the line gold standard, double blind, placebo studies if we can on those ingredients. And then again, using like the efficacious dose because what we find is just people, even in the vaginal space, right? Like there's a lot of vaginal probiotics on the market right now, but most of them are not using the clinical dose of like the strain I was talking about. We're using the clinical dose of that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
expensive. And it makes our product a little more expensive, but we feel good selling to consumers because we know it works.
Yeah. I had a big question in my head that went, which is part of midlife brain fog. It'll come back.
Sure. I don't have anything for that yet, but I
It
find,
happens to the best of us. Well,
sure.
my entire following has it. But
Yeah.
uh I want to talk about we've talked about your probiotics, and that is a hot trend right now, right? And as one of the first to market, you are leading that. But because your whole business is surrounding health and your whole passion is continued wellness, and you live in Aspen, you can't get away from it. What do you see as upcoming trends? I mean, you are just in this half an hour conversation, you are a research base, not only a market research base, but a clinical research base. What do you see as trends, and what of those trends are noise, right? What do you think is really promising, and what is just like buzzing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're heading as a whole, as like a society, from my perspective, and I'm maybe living in like a bit of a bubble, but I think what I'm seeing is there's a much bigger trend towards health and wellness in general, towards more exercise, eating healthier, eating whole foods. I think people are drinking less, which I think is a good thing overall. I think there's a
It
lot of
kills it kills the gut microbiome.
pulls them up and it causes a lot of inflammation. So I think these trends are very like I think people are looking for replacements for things like alcohol that, has been so popular for so long. And I think there's a really interesting kind of trend in this like health and wellness space where there's these unique health and wellness gyms opening that revolve more just around like working out, but also like full experiences. And I think, and you probably know more about this than I do, but medicine just seems to be moving in a very interesting pace to like less, what is the word I'm looking for? Like less, less reactive and more preventative, which I think is very interesting and I like a lot. Um, I think it's still very expensive for people to go get like these preventative, like do these preventative, like kind of like the full body MRI and all these kind of things. I think, and the blood work and all these like tests, I've done all of these crazy things. I'm like one of those like weird longevity guys, and I've done all of that, but it's very expensive. But I think
Yep.
as it becomes more
Did it
popular,
change your habits? Did it change the way you live? Or it was just interesting data?
it did. So, well, there's good sides and bad sides to that. The full body MRI actually like identified all these like weird abnormalities in my spine, which like threw me down this whole rabbit hole for a year of like, trying to figure out how do I fix that. And then I, finally like talked to an orthopedic friend of mine. He's like, dude, everyone over 40 has abnormalities in their spine. Like
Don't
you're
worry
good,
about
you're
that.
good. Right.
Yeah.
So I think in a sense, those can be a little dangerous because you can go down these weird rabbit holes. But the blood work and stuff, like I think it was just more of a guiding light as opposed to like changing everything. It was kind of like, okay, like, if I'm eating a lot of, for me, it was like eggs were causing a lot of inflammation for me. So I was like slowly started like cutting, but doing blood
Mhm.
work once can be a very misleading thing. It's kind of like you have to do it frequently to really get a baseline. And so I'm hoping these things become easier to access and more affordable for all of us because I think the less we can go to doctors, probably the better. And no offense,
No, no,
but
no, 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 not at all. Because I agree with you. I think I see a widening gap between disease care, right? You just 15 minutes insurance-based disease care, and those of us who are willing to spend our health savings accounts and extra money to get what we want when we want it, right? But what I think, tell me what you think about this. What I see is people are desperate to feel better. So that's why for companies that aren't so are, you're very, it sounds like you're very mission and morally driven company, but there's a lot of scrupulous companies. People are so desperate to feel better, they'll spend whatever on nothing, right? So they're just gobbling up these huge stacks of anything. So I think I agree with you. There is this movement towards prevention. I just don't think that the average Joe knows what that means. What do you think?
no, I would agree with you 100%. I think the majority of people are still just going to doctors when they're sick and just for their
Mhm.
checkup. But I think I'm hopeful that we're moving in a direction where people, are exercising more, eating healthier. Like it
Mhm.
feels like we want to get there. And it feels like slowly but surely people are becoming more aware that they can take their health in their own hands and start, understanding that like, okay, I don't, if maybe the doctors don't have all the answers and there's other things we can do, like I can be doing myself. Like exercise for me was like a
Yeah.
life
No
changer.
brainer. Yeah.
Right.
No brainer. And yet 70% of people don't do it, right?
Right. Right.
Somebody don't. If someone is starting out, if somebody's hearing this and they're like, okay, Vaughn, I've heard you. Now you've got the supplement guru of the world here. And you've taught us how to find safe things. If they're just starting out, listen, nobody is going to start out taking a stack of 20 supplements. That's a lot of goop in the morning.
Yeah. And I don't recommend that either.
I mean, a lot of capsules. So if you're starting out somebody from zero, what are the 3 things they should consider as step 1? Because I think health should be layered, right? We make a habit of these things, then we do this. So from your perspective.
Yeah. First of all, I couldn't agree with you more that like things have to be layered. And like if you just dump 100 things on people, they're like, this is just like too much. Like forget this.
Yeah.
To your question, do you mean like in the sense of like supplements or just health in general?
Well, I think people listening to me know that I'm very specific about cardiovascular, how I think they should lift, sleep, and anti-inflammatory nutrition, but I never talk about supplement stacks. So you're the expert in the room about that. How would you start people layering in? Okay, here are 3 or 4 things. You're not getting them in your diet. Nobody's perfect. What should you do?
I think, and this is a little bit of a plug for us, but I think probiotics are like, I don't think anyone's getting enough probiotics in their diet unless they're eating a ton of yogurt or something. But like for me, I was drinking a lot of kombucha and then I was like, oh man, it has like so much sugar in it. So I think the nice thing about probiotics is it is just a capsule. So that's an easy, I think fiber, collagen, and creatine are kind of like the ones that and I think they're easy because 2 of those can be mixed into a shake, and then the 2 other ones can just be a capsule.
Let me ask you about creatine. Creatine has a lot of studies, thank God, right? I take 5 milligrams a day or 5 grams a day. But there are some people coming onto the market. So it's always been creatine monohydrate, right? I think that's right. Yeah. But now some people are coming on with, oh, no, you need the hydrochloride.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I was looking at a study on this the other day, and it was pushing me more towards the monohydrate is still the way to
better
go.
one.
Yeah. I don't think there's enough evidence to say that it's not the one yet to use. So I'm sticking with the monohydrate for now.
Because that has the world's literature for those listening. When you hear somebody on Instagram saying, oh, it's the most studied, whatever, right. It's the monohydrate form.
Right. And we don't sell creatine. So that's like, I'm not trying to plug a product of ours. Like it's not something but I think it's a real, like you said, it's like I take 5 grams a day. My wife takes 5 grams a day. I think it's,
and
it depends on people's diet too. It depends on like, a lot of people aren't eating enough protein probably. So, if you need
true. But even,
protein.
I prescribe 1 gram of protein per ideal pound a day, which is high. But even with that, I ask people to take creatine. So
for sure.
So 3 things: the probiotic, the fiber, the creatine. And can I just ask you a question? I've always wondered this because, scientists, I had a stem cell lab. We're growing bacteria in the lab. So I'm used to it in a petri dish. So it's lyophilized in the capsule. Does it come back to life? What happens when you swallow it?
Probiotic.
Rehydrates. Yeah, the probiotic. It rehydrates and it comes alive.
Yeah. And so like the probiotics are alive when they're in the capsule.
They are?
It's still like,
is it a liquid in the capsule?
It depends, but ours are like they're live cultures in there. And they have we have prebiotics in our capsule that are feeding the live cultures. And so ours are in an acid resistant capsule. So it actually gets into your gut and opens up
past
there.
The
and then
stomach into the small intestine, right?
A lot of people don't use those acid resistant capsules, and it'll just like your esophagus will just destroy it and kill all the bacteria.
Oh, people, that is an important point that Logan just made. So are those always stated on the label that it's an acid resistant capsule?
It should be. We do.
Because, yeah, because for the, you know what, it just never occurred to me for those listening. I mean, the esophagus and the stomach are like sulfuric acid. They are so acidic. That's why they break down and everything. It's not until you get into the small intestine and the late small intestine that it becomes basic enough to sustain bacteria, right? So that's what you're talking about.
Okay. And like manufacturing probiotics, for example, is like it's a very difficult thing to do for most manufacturers because the spores are alive. They can get in like the vents. Like it's a customized. Like yeah, it's fun and it's a lot of science. It's interesting, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into like you can't just take a capsule and then it's just you're good. You got to make sure you're getting the right product.
And that leads to if they're live cultures in the capsule feeding on prebiotics, the expiration date
Yeah,
matters.
it
So
very
never
much
take a probiotic
like
that's expired.
for sure. And then like for example, what we do is like so we do a big overage. So like our 60 billion, our main probiotic has 60 billion live cultures, right? We put in, I think around 94 billion right now when we manufacture it because some of that dies off over time. So the idea is like at the expiration, it'll still have 60 billion. So another important thing looking at is like, is it saying when it's manufactured it has 60 billion, or is it saying it has 60 billion at its shelf life to your expiration? They're very different things.
So important. I don't think these are the kind of details that most of us have seen out in public. So I'm so glad you're telling us. So you would start someone de novo with no history of trying to fill in the gaps with probiotics, fiber, creatine. What would be the next three things? A midlife woman, 35 to 65.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I like fish oil too. I think that, it's not something that we get enough
Omega
of.
3.
Omega-3, yeah.
Yeah. Does it need to be in a ratio with omega 6 or 3,000 milligram? Is it 3,000? I believe is the dose of.
Yeah, that's what I take. I don't know. I don't take DHEA or what is the other thing that goes with fish oil? My brain is not thinking of that, but I take the just pure fish oil,
Mm-hmm.
right? Omega-3.
For anti-inflammatory, those of you not doing it for anti-inflammatory.
I think that's a good base for a lot of people. I think, if you kind of like I got at one point I was taking like 100 supplements a day.
Oh gosh.
For sure. I was like, I think this is excessive.
Look
So
at this handful. Holy cow.
I've cut that back a bit just to see like kind of I think you kind of have to experiment a little bit and see like what makes you feel good. And like if you're taking something and like you said, if you're feeling really bloated, then maybe you need a digestive enzyme, or maybe you need something that like targets bloating. Like so I think it depends on the person really.
What do you think about I'm sure you sell a lot of these too. Magnesium, vitamin D, K2 blends.
Actually, those are on yeah. We don't sell those, but I do recommend them. I take a magnesium. I personally take magnesium at night. It helps me with my sleep.
Yep.
I take vitamin D too because it's just hard. I mean, I live in Colorado, so it's like we get a lot of sunshine, but probably
But
not
you
enough.
don't get a lot of sunshine.
For sure. So yeah, I think those are also good ones to add to the stack. And it's kind of like getting in the habit of just taking it too. Like I put mine in little jars every morning, so it's there for me to take. It's easy to remember.
Well, and those are the basic ones, honestly, that when I start somebody out, it's those are the ones. Vitamin D with a K2, magnesium 500. Either what kind do you take? Either L-threonine or glycinate?
Yeah, I take the L-theanine, however you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, L-threonine. Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
omega-3, some of them give you fishy taste, other ones don't. But then creatine, um, and then fiber and probiotics and if you are listening and you are covering those bases and you're feeling great, well, that's when you can layer in all the almost
Right.
Eastern medicine things. I surprised myself at a longevity meeting a couple months ago when somebody asked me, because I'm an allopathic surgeon, which means trained like a regular MD, but a big part of the longevity crowd now. And I think they wanted me to talk badly about naturopaths. And the question I got, and I think they wanted to challenge me about Eastern medicine, but the way I responded, and tell me what you think about this. I said, you know what? Allopaths like myself have to be humble enough to realize that 5,000 years of herbal and Eastern medicine could not be all wrong. Yeah.
I could agree with you more. Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to my story of like the arnica thing where I was like, okay, like there's something here because some of this works and these people have been doing this for so long that like, I think we kind of got in Western medicine just kind of like started writing that off because like we know better and we have all these great systems. And I think now we're kind of realizing like we're really good at some stuff, but we have some stuff to learn too.
Yeah, I do really, and it has been a really just a pivoting of mindset, a curiosity for me that there's probably some really good things that we've missed out on because we've been so rigid and narrow. And what is there, right? How can we make people feel better in a different way?
Yeah, 100%.
Logan, I'm fascinated by the brands you've built and just how careful it seems like you guys are not to throw shit in a bottle. I mean,
for
the
sure.
sourcing, I thought you were going to say, no, we have our own farms. We're growing our own fiber because we want, but close to that, right? Everybody that supplies you.
For sure. Yeah. It's just, again, like I want to develop products that I would take myself and I would give to like my friends and family. That's like really at the heart of what we do because I want to be proud of what we do.
So fiber's coming. Your next product is a fiber product coming out when?
Any day now. It might even yesterday.
Now, yeah. Oh, good team. Do you hear that? He wants it out yesterday.
Sure. It tastes really good. Yeah, it's a very good product.
When fiber is launched, what's next? So we can look out for it. Or you have to kill us if you told us it's a secret.
I don't know. We're debating that internally. There's a bunch of different interesting things we're looking at. It comes down to the science again. Like we're just like, there's some interesting stuff around like skin health and how your gut can affect your skin health. So we're trying
critical.
So what, if there's some interesting angles there. So we're really digging in the science and seeing like what makes the most sense next.
That's amazing. Well, Logan, thank you so much for taking this 45 minutes with us and diving deep into an industry that is not well understood, well used, but not understood. So thanks so much for being with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really fun.
Thanks for joining us on Hot for Your Health, where we bring you conversations from the bleeding edge of science, health, and culture. You can find links from today's show and connect with me at drvondawright.com. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Dr. Vonda Wright. See you next week.